I remember one of my tutors said when I was first starting to throw that when you're making a bowl, you want to imagine a marble being dropped from one side of the rim to the other, and it needs to be able to flow through seamlessly without hitting like a bump or a flat spot. So I feel like that's kind of always in my head when I'm throwing bowls, imagining that marble. I'm Grace. I'm Muckware Ceramics, and I'm a production ceramicist that makes tableware, homewares, and kitchenware. I was born and bred in the Northern Rivers, and that's where I'm currently based. Because I grew up here, because my friends and family are here, it holds a really special place in my heart. It's where the bush meets the coast, which is really special. We've got a beautiful headland, so the surf is really good, and it's only a short drive to the hinterland where you have waterfalls, bushwalks. I'm really grateful to live between these two landscapes, and they really affect my work. Come here! I'm trying to feed the horses, but they're all the way down there. So I was studying at UNSW at Art and Design, doing a fine art degree, and I hadn't had any introduction to clay before then. And then I happily stumbled upon ceramics and ended up majoring in it for my honours year. That's where you work on one project for a whole year. The focus was really to create fine art. So the goal was to get in a gallery. That was always the end goal, which it was never my end goal, I don't think. All I wanted to do for my final project was to throw bowls and just hone my skill at throwing for production throwing, essentially. Little did I know it was training for my job now. There was a bit of pushback from the curriculum and the tutors, I guess, that it wasn't conceptual enough. It's all I wanted to do. So I just went ahead with it, and I ended up making 60 to 70 bowls for this installation. And the way that I got around the fine art curriculum was that I just arranged them and stacked them all in weird ways. And that was my installation of functional ware. This is my favorite part of throwing, especially a bowl, is using a kidney, which helps to shape the interior of the bowl. Can flatten plates, can do all sorts of things. I graduated in 2018 and was still living in Sydney at the time, and thought, what am I gonna do? Ceramics is all I wanna do. I don't really know how to get into that field. And so I moved home and reached out to a studio here, inquiring if they needed an assistant or a teacher or anything, and landed a job at the clay barn, and then worked my way up to managing the studio, teaching, running firings, kiln management, all of that. It was a really good lesson of what to do, what not to do. While I was at the clay barn, Muckware was operating, and I was making there in my own time, and I had a bit of storage there, and so I would sell from there, fire all my work there. And what prompted my move to my own studio was that I outgrew the space. I didn't have enough time to make what I needed to make, and I didn't have enough space. So this is my first studio that I had in Marrickville. It was a little garden shed in 2019 where I had my first wheel and a couple of milk crates, and that was everything I had. I was really grateful that even when I didn't have anything to sell, people were messaging me and asking what I had or when new things were coming, so that was really encouraging. And lots of potters buy your work, which I love. I'm always so honoured when other potter wants to buy my work. It's oh, you get it. Creating a business name is really hard. I thought long and hard about it, and I wanted a name that was very visceral and spoke of the materiality of clay. So muck was a word I landed on, and muck alone didn't feel right, so Muckware came after. And then my friend was saying that the logo should really speak of the work that you make. So we developed a font that mimicked my style, and it was actually modelled off a Hot Wheels font, which is cool. So forever grateful for creative friends that want to help out. I'm making my new bowl, which I'm calling Large Dinner Bowl. I don't know if another name is going to come, but it's currently just large dinner bowl. I don't really go with fluffy names. It's just kind of like short mug, tall mug, dinner bowl, main plate. So I'll think of a design, and usually that comes from a need, so wanting to create a product for a specific function. And then the beauty tends to come after. I personally wanted a larger bowl at home for pasta and curries with lots of sauce, and more of just like a catch-all bowl. And we've been using them at home for months now, and they're the only bowls we reach for. So I'm currently centering the clay, so making sure all of the clay is centered and homogeneous on the wheel. And then once it's centered, since this is a wide, shallow bowl, I go ahead and open it out quite wide and then create the depth from the center. Preferably, I leave 1 centimetre of clay in the base so that I can trim a foot in. So I'm kind of eyeballing. That's when the muscle memory comes into it. Once you've done it a few times, and especially if you're throwing 50 plates, your hands and your muscle memory kind of like remember what you're doing, but what's happening behind the muscle memory is weighing your clay, wedging your clay, measuring the piece. So I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing, which is nice. There's usually podcasts on in the background, kind of occupying my mind, and then I just get to sit and my hands do the rest, which is really lovely to get to that point. So once it reaches the 26 centimetre mark, then it's done. So I measure with a ruler to make sure that they're all the same. They are handmade, so they do vary, but I try to do everything in my power to make sure that they are similar and they stack well so that people can build on their sets. So someone who buys a bowl now and then wants to build on their collection in 6 months' time, that those bowls still fit together. So I guess hyperfunctional describes my work to a T. Function always comes before form, so I'm always making sure that it functions well before it looks beautiful. So a mug, for instance, you want the lip of the mug to sit nicely in your mouth, so it's not a really fat lip. It's not too thin that it's sharp, so it is pointy in your mouth. You want the handle to sit in 2 fingers or 1 finger. Those are design considerations. The weight and the placement of the handle, these are all things that go through a potter's mind when you're making a mug. Someone would just pick up a mug off the shelf and think, oh, that feels nice, or that's good, but there's so many design elements that really go into a piece, especially like a mug that seems pretty standard, but you can really get it wrong. So these are my spoon rests. There's always stacks and stacks of spoon rests here because they're great to have and they seem to fly off the shelves. So very happy to have a big stock of spoon rests. When you put your spoon on a spoon rest and you just think like, have I been putting my spoon on the bench the whole time? Those are the things that like really make my heart sing. Making products that have that function and you just go, oh, that was meant to be there right next to the stove and it's serving its function like beautifully. Trimming is the stage that you do after your piece is leather hard. This is a mug, so I'll trim this cylinder before I can attach the handle and stamp it as well so that it's 90% finished and then the handle will go on. Yeah, I really like trimming. It's clean. So on days where I feel like I don't want to be covered in clay and wet and cold, trimming is a really lovely meditative practice. Ideally, you want it to look like the handle is growing from the mug, like it's not something that's an extra add-on. So this method of like attaching it and then pulling it from the mug helps it to look more like they're married together. Running a business is a lot. You work 24/7, 7 days a week. I'm always on, whether it's thinking about posts I need to make on Instagram, new ranges I'm designing, production lists, things I need to make, when I'm gonna get the kiln on. Last night I was packing until 8 p.m, packing orders at home, which like, you don't really see that kind of side of the business. It's all romantic and glamorous in the studio making pottery, and then there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into it. Right now I'm glazing oil bottles, and this glaze is my butter glaze, which is a gloss subtle yellow glaze. So it's pink because it has a small amount of red iron oxide in it, which makes the glaze look pink when it's raw. And then as it fires, it melts and it comes out a pale yellow color. The olive oil bottle is one of my best sellers and kind of like an OG Muckware piece. They're a staple in the collection and they're definitely not going anywhere. They still sell really well, and I can't make enough of them. I make 150 to 200 pieces a week in here on my own, which is a lot. So I'm currently the bottleneck of the business. It's quite a difficult craft to hire for because time is really the only thing that can kind of teach you this skill of production. So it's really hard to find someone that has that kind of time behind them on the wheel. So the ramen bowl is a very deep, well-balanced bowl. This little lip is called a flange, which is a strange word. The height and the depth of the bowl help to keep your broth hotter for longer. Heat will escape quicker from a wider surface. So traditionally ramen bowls are deeper because it keeps your broth and your noodles hotter for longer. I always want people to know and feel through my work that everything's very considered. There's a purpose for every detail in the product, whether it's immediately recognizable or recognizable to me. I just want people to think it's really functional, it feels good, and it's beautiful at the same time. Like, I just want it to tick all those boxes.